This week's parasha is full of all kinds of commandments and teachings. After giving my basic simple idea, I'm going to go through a relatively simplified outline that I made of the parasha. It consists of 4 chapters, Leviticus chapter 21 to the end of chapter 24. The main concept I want to talk about in this parasha is what is expressed towards the end of the parasha, towards the end of this Torah portion. That's the idea of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a well-known saying being that it's quoted in the New Testament as though the Messiah has come and changed the law, heaven forbid. As we know, the revealed things are to us and our descendants forever to do all the matters of this Torah, as it states in Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 29. So, what does it mean, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth? If we want to keep the will of God as revealed to the people of Israel under the leadership of Moses, does this imply that if somebody accidentally steps on my foot, that it's the will of God that I jump on his as well? No, God forbid. And though that may even be done accidentally, I do understand that this concept of an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth does include even unintentional damages that are done. That's because if you look up the concept, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, it appears in at least 3 different places in the law of Moses, this being one of them, Leviticus chapter 24. I highly encourage you guys to look up the other places. I've gone ahead and given the main reference that gives you much insight into the matter. Exodus chapter 21. You can notice in verse 22 it already says that in the context of an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, that the payment for damages is according to the decision of the judges. So it's clearly not the oversimplified vigilante style type justice where, hey, somebody cut out my eye, so I have to cut out his as well. Rather, it's according to the deliberation of judges. You see explicitly from Exodus chapter 21, if you continue into verse 26 and 27, you will see there explicitly it says, giving the same exact example, if one destroyed the eye of a servant or knocked out one of his teeth, the law is not that you knock out the teeth of the other person. The law is that you set the servant free before his time. And that is the basic concept of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That just payment be made for damages. That is the only possible understanding, because not everyone's body part or whatever other property is of same value as another individual's body part or property of the same type. An artist, for example, who paints, his eyes and his hands have far greater value in his livelihood than the eyes or the hands of a vocal artist who makes money singing. So, if a singer or anybody else injured the hands or the eyes of a visual artist who paints, works in graphics, what kind of just punishment would it be to cut off the hand of the individual who did this if that individual's livelihood isn't at all connected to using his hands or his eyes? There would be no justice done whatsoever. I don't want to go into this too much, but I think that is pretty much the idea. Now I'm just going to read through the summary that I've written up here, and you will notice that these largely have to do with functions centered around the temple which is to be established in the holy city of Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, Be'ezrat Hashem b'Korov. This temple is the center of the religion of the people of Israel. The great bulk of the commandments in the law of Moses regard what we do related to this temple and the service of God that is done in it, including the worship of God among all the people of Israel is focused on the temple. All Jews in the world, when we pray, we face in that direction. There are 3 Hagim, there are 3 pilgrimage festivals every year that ideally every single Israelite male is to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, to the temple. Unfortunately, we cannot do this in our days. So keep in mind as I read this, notice how often it stands out, and notice how over and over again it's made clear that according to the will of God, as commanded to the people of Israel, these are everlasting commandments. Chapter 21 deals with the laws of priestly holiness, that they not become impure except for in the burial of immediate family members, that they not shave off their beards, nor cut their flesh. There are limitations on who they can marry, and certain physical abnormalities prevent the priests, the descendants of Aharon, from serving in the temple. Again, you see the temple. Chapter 22. Not to serve in the temple while in a state of impurity. Restrictions on non-priests pertaining to the eating of the elevation offerings. These offerings are only allowed to be done in the temple. Animal offerings of Israelites must be whole and free of certain physical abnormalities. I think the parallel between the restriction on the descendants of Aharon who serve in the temple, that they be free of certain physical abnormalities, and the fact that the same is the case with the animal offerings that are to be brought to the temple, shows that the sacrifices and offerings that occurred there are highly symbolic and largely are to cause one to reflect on himself, his own wholeness and state of mind before the Creator and in keeping His commandments. Continuing, chapter 22, that the ger, the naturalized immigrant or the full convert to the people of Israel, is distinguished from a ben nechor, a foreigner. You can see this pretty clearly if you compare chapter 22 verse 18 to 22 verse 35. That one not sacrifice newborn cattle until from the 8th day after birth and onward. Not to slaughter the young cattle and its parent on the same day. To keep my commandments and to do them. This is a fundamental commandment that is repeated over and over again in the law of Moses. That is, that you should keep God's commandments and do them. Notice, though these are intrinsically related, they are nonetheless distinct. And therefore we see that Rashi, the most popularly used commentary on the law of Moses and the entire Bible among the people of Israel, Rashi explains that when it says, keep my commandments, that this is referring to studying, to Mishnah, to the constant meditation upon the rulings of God's commandments and how they're to be done. And do them regards the action. So these are the 2 fundamental aspects of fulfilling God's will in our life. To study and know how to do, and then the doing. And that is how we are able to keep God's law, His Torah, His divine instruction, even when forces beyond our immediate control prevent us from doing His will. We're still able to guard His commandments, to keep His commandments, such as many of the things that occur in this week's Torah portion regarding the temple. You are able to keep a thought in your heart and cherish it dearly without actually doing it. But if given the ability and you truly cherish the idea or thought, you will certainly carry it out. And this understanding is was sort of a epiphany for me in my later Christian days. So chapter 22 continues, don't profane my holy name, for I shall be sanctified within the people of Israel. I am the transcendent Lord who sanctifies you, who took you out of Egypt to be your authority. Chapter 23 deals with the appointed times of assembly. These are the main directly, divinely ordained holidays that God has given to the world. If you want to celebrate God's will in this world, this is the format in which we are to do it instead of making things up. Again, notice how many times it will be repeated in this chapter that these commandments are everlasting. So starting at the beginning of chapter 23, you have the commandment regarding the weekly Sabbath, Shabbat. Then you have that the first month, counting from the Exodus from Egypt, on the 14th day, you have Passover, Pesach. On the 15th day of the same month, you have Hag HaMosef. This is the feast, the pilgrimage feast of unleavened bread, and it will be for a 7-day period. Then you have, beginning from the second day of Passover, continuing for a full 7-week period, what is called Sfirat Omer, and this is what we are doing right now, Torah observant individuals throughout the world, that we count the days following the waved barley offering in the temple that's to be done in the temple the day after the second day of the Passover holidays. And also included here is that commandment, that as an everlasting commandment, that this offering, the waved barley offering, be done in the temple. It says, as an everlasting commandment for all generations and all locations. Clearly, the commandments regarding the temple require and presume that the temple is standing. Now we have the commandment to leave the corners of our fields and whatever the harvesters have left behind for the poor and for the immigrants to gather, to live off of. This is one of the most beautiful things in God's divine instruction, that constantly, over and over again, importance and value for the weak and the downtrodden is emphasized, and constantly we are reminded that we as a whole nation were once at that point. We must realize that ultimately we are all no different from the other. Just as a rich man was once a little baby and had nothing, so also a individual who as an adult has nothing is no less human and no less deserving of respect and care and concern as a rich man. Continuing, the 7th month, counting again from the Exodus, on the first day is Zichron Teruah. This is the remembrance of the sounding of the shofar, also known as Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. 10th day of the 7th month is Yom Kippurim, Day of Atonements. There we are commanded to afflict ourselves with fasting, according to the oral teaching handed down from Moses through the Mosaic court. 15th day of the 7th month is Hag HaSukkot. This is for a 7-day period. On the 8th day following the beginning of Hag HaSukkot, we have Shemini Asarath. This is the assembly of the 8th day. In the 24th chapter of Leviticus, we have the commandment regarding the Ner Tamid, the ever-burning lamp, which, again, is something that can only be fulfilled with the temple. Attending the lamps in the temple is commanded as an everlasting commandment. That there will be a pure frankincense arranged as a memorial for the bread and offering to the Transcendent One, that the priest will arrange it before the Transcendent One as an everlasting covenant with the people of Israel. From Aharon to his descendants as an everlasting commandment, they shall eat of the offering in a holy location. Continuing in chapter 24, we have the story of the Israelite woman who blasphemed and cursed the name of the transcendent Lord, blessed be He. We have that the death penalty is the punishment for blaspheming the name of the transcendent one, whether a native born or an immigrant. And then, as we started off this video, we have the principle of an eye for an eye, and it must be understood in light of Exodus chapter 21, verse 22 through 27. And then again, at the very end of the chapter, equality among the people of Israel in their obligations to uphold the will of God under the covenant established with the nation of Israel at Mount Sinai, and that is that there is one law given to you, to the naturalized immigrant, the full convert such as myself, and the native-born Israelite alike. There we go. Yeah, if you have any ideas, I know that a lot could be said about this parasha, as every parasha, but especially this one, because it's so packed and full. But I mainly just want to give people an overall view of the contents of the Law of Moses